He's locked up 23 hours a day, moved in shackles, no one to talk to, no one to trust, and only 1 hour of daylight. This is life in solitary for BK. And this is Surviving the Survivor, the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime. We've been on top of the Idaho 4 murders since the story first broke back on November 13th of 2022. You know, I always start the show remembering the victims, of course, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, her best friend. Then you've got Xana Kernodle and boyfriend Ethan Chapin. Ethan, of course, a triplet. Just such a tragic story, and it continues. And the latest news, of course, Bryan Kohberger, BK, as he shall be known for here and evermore, or by his inmate number, has officially been moved to solitary confinement at the IMSI. Of course, that is the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. It is a place that I was able to visit while I was in Boise covering the story. We did a video under the video tab. Please take the time to watch that. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. But underneath the video tab, you will see a tour I did behind the scenes of the IMSI. And it was horrific in there, in a word. I can't really describe it beyond the video that you can watch. Just a very sterile environment. We were in B block, which is one of the long-term solitary housing units. Bryan Kohberger is in the J block, very similar. But within that B block, I asked the warden when we were with him, a guy named Randy Valley, who seemed like an amiable and decent guy. I asked him, where are all the inmates? I've told this story before on STS. And he told me, well, they're in their cell. That's what they do all day. I thought that they were out in the yard and maybe showering. And then when I look closer, you could see through those windows that are just slats, you could see images of different faces and or heads of the inmates kind of bouncing up to see what we were doing there. They all knew that there was a media tour going on. I was there along with News Nation and some people from the Idaho Statesman. It was just chilling. The smells, the sounds, it's anxiety provoking because you're in there, you're walking out. When you get up to the entrance, and the facility there actually has 6 different institutions in it. Of course, IMSI, the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, it houses death row. It has 8 male death row inmates, and there's a single female on death row at a different Idaho prison. But the IMSI by far is the most secure of all the facilities. And of course, that is where BK is now. So just to give a breakdown of his day, someone described it as living in your bathroom for the rest of your life. And that's essentially what it is, except it's worse. 23 hours per day in his cell, 1 hour or less of outdoor time daily. And I was able to visit the yard, and essentially inmates are in cages. When you're outside, you're in a cage. There's a little bit of sunlight peering in if you're lucky. The block for inmates with mental health issues, they have a mural in there of the mountain, the sun and some trees. And that's literally sometimes the only nature that you see. And it's only if you're in that particular unit. But where BK is held now, a much different story. The only thing he's going to see is basically a steel metal door with a slat for a window on the door side. So security and corrections officers can look in, and then a slat or a window facing outside where he can maybe catch a squirrel running by here and there. I'm not sure which way he faces. It's possible he just faces another wall. It's possible he faces outside, but it is a grim proposition. This is a guy who is 30 years old, who could live to 80 or 85, although life expectancy is much shorter in the prison system, especially when you're a lifer. But let's say he goes the next 50 years. Let's say prison justice is not meted out and he survives. Imagine, I mean, that's like the life of a tortoise that lives 190 years, because the days are just going to tick by so slowly. There's nothing to do. You can read. He will have a tablet. I'm going to get into that in a second. But back to daily routine for BK now that he has officially been moved to solitary confinement. Again, 23 hours per day in his cell out of 24. And you'll recall inmates at the county jail in Latah said that he would pace at night. He couldn't sleep at night, so he was up pacing all night and then would just take sort of cat naps during the day. 1 hour of that outdoor activity, again, in a cage outside. If he has to be moved from place to place, let's say the shower, he must go in full restraints. Shower happens every other day, sometimes just 3 times a week. He is allowed commissary, JPay, which is the prison communication system. So he'll be able to use a tablet effectively if he can afford one. You have to buy it in commissary, but if he can get the tablet, he can use it, and that's how he can communicate with his family and maybe some deranged people out there who want to pen pal with him and write to him. I'm not sure the specifics of all that, but he'll have limited internet access and limited access, I guess, to entertainment like TV, streaming, that sort of thing. According to the warden, he is in long-term restrictive housing, and that, of course, is Idaho's absolute harshest prison environment. Idaho no longer, well, they have the death penalty, but no longer on the table for BK because of the plea deal. Now, who's locked up alongside him? Chad Daybell, the husband of Lori Vallow Daybell, the so-called doomsday mom. He's in there on death row. The inmates on death row, I found out, are able to come out into a little yard. So it's actually, believe it or not, less harsh for the death row inmates. Apparently, they're a group of 8, and Chad is the new one, but apparently they all sort of get along, and they play cards during the day with each other. I think they're even potentially allowed to pet an animal that strolls through, like a cat or a dog, if it goes through. Occasionally, the warden says he would bring his dog Chief in. Now, I'm not absolutely sure if those animals are allowed onto death row. I think it would be up to the discretion of the warden. But that is the company close to at least BK, not in the same block. You've also got serial killer Thomas Creech in there. He had a botched execution back in 2024, which put a small hiatus on execution by lethal injection, although they're going to try to get back to Thomas Creech. And then you've got an inmate named Gerald Pizzuto, who's also on death row. Again, BK not on death row, but this just shows you the caliber of criminal mind and criminal intent of the people who are near him. Gerald Pizzuto, who is at IMSI, is a convicted serial killer. He was found guilty of the brutal double murders of Alberta Berta Herndon and her nephew Delbert Herndon back in July of 1985. It just goes to show you how long these people sit on death row. Thomas Creech has been there since the early 1970s. Not only did he murder them, but he bound and bludgeoned both victims to death with a hammer. One of them was also shot. He was convicted at that time of 2 counts of first-degree murder. And then in Washington State, back in 85, he's also convicted of killing Rita Drury by strangulation, and John Jones, who he shot in Seattle, earning both first-degree and second-degree murder convictions with a combined total of over 69 years in prison in Washington. So again, this just goes to show the depraved sort of criminal mind keeping company with BK at the IMSI. IMSI, it appeared okay to us when we saw it with our own bare eyes, but at one point by the Security Journal Americas back in 2024, it was ranked one of the 15 worst prisons in America. And among the things cited were feces, covered cages, violent brawls, and biohazard level ventilation. And we were warned when we went into the block for people with mental health issues that the smell would be overwhelming, but they had been working on it since the new warden took over, and that is relatively recent in the last year or so. The odor in there, not quite as bad, maybe because we got the warning, but again, just to paint the picture of how awful this place is, and because of these crimes, BK will be spending the rest of his life, at least for the foreseeable future, in solitary confinement. He was moved there back on Tuesday, July 29th, and could be there for days, years, months. It just depends on his status, and they're going to update it periodically, but he'll be there for the foreseeable future. In my opinion, and it's just a small opinion, that is a fate worse than death row. Because again, on death row, the inmates hang out in a small yard, we were told. They play cards during the day. They hang out and sometimes even have contact with some animals or pets, courtesy of the warden. In the unit, the J block unit where BK is going to be held, that is not the case. You're alone with your thoughts, your own mind, all day, every day, with essentially 1 hour out on the yard. And you're alone out there too, stuck inside a cage. So anywhere he goes, he'll likely have 3 to 4 corrections officers. He'll be heavily shackled and heavily watched, again, for the foreseeable future. The Idaho Statesman, my good friend Kevin Fixler, getting a scoop with Bill Thompson. He, of course, is Latah County's longtime prosecutor. He broke down why the plea deal happened and what really held the case together. He said the main thing that made the difference, and I quote here, the DNA was critical to the strength of the case. He was referring to BK's paternal DNA match from trash collected at his parents' home, which linked him to the knife sheath at the left at the scene. Of course, when Olivia Goncalves, Kaylee Goncalves' sister, got up there for victim impact statements, she rubbed it into BK's face, essentially saying, "You're a loser and a failure and a bad killer because you got yourself caught," which is something that Dr. Ann Burgess, who was consulted, incidentally, by the Goncalveses, it is something that Ann Burgess, the living legend, Dr. Ann Burgess, told us would really grate on him and get under his skin, and Olivia Goncalves let him have it. It's interesting because Bill Thompson told Kevin Fixler of the Idaho Statesman, and I quote here, "I think it's fair to say we might have not been able to prosecute if it wasn't for that touch DNA evidence," which is just incredible. This guy could still be free. He went on to say that there was no motive, no murder weapon ever recovered, no known connection to the victims. We now know that BK in his possession had IDs of 2 students. That was uncovered, but none, as far as we know, related to the so-called Idaho 4. Bill Thompson told the Idaho Statesman, and I quote, "We did our job. We brought this to a conclusion that gave immediate finality." No one likes the word closure. There is no closure. These families and the victims' families are going to suffer. Of course, there are 2 surviving roommates. They both spoke at sentencing and gave their victim impact statements. Dylan Mortensen, of course, is one of them. She talked about how she saw BK the night of the murders. She describes a man in a black ski mask, slim build, about 6 feet tall, walking toward the sliding door. And Bill Thompson is asked about this and why she was not killed. Kevin Fixler of the Statesman asking him about it. And he says, and I quote, "I have a hard time imagining that the killer did not see Dylan." So the question is, why did he spare her? And Bill Thompson answers, he'd been in the house probably longer than he planned. He had killed more people than he had planned. It wouldn't surprise us if he panicked. And then in the courtroom, Dylan filled in some of the gaps here, saying, "What he did shattered me in places I didn't know could break. I had to sleep in my mom's bed. I was terrified to close my eyes," and goes on to say, "My nervous system never got the message that it was over." And that's the reason why she didn't call 911 for so long. She was literally in a state of shock. And when you saw her, like I did, inside that courtroom, delivering that victim impact statement. I mean, she didn't have the strength to stand up. She had to sit down, and then her mom was comforting her, and it was just painful to watch. I mean, really, really painful. This was some of the most raw emotion, if not the most raw emotion that we saw this entire time, particularly at the sentencing for BK. Why was BK's family not called to testify at the trial or at the plea hearing? Well, Bill Thompson answered that as well. Of course, BK's mother is a woman named Mary Ann, the sister Amanda. Bill Thompson said, and I quote, "They just weren't the best witnesses to show what was going on." I had a very good look at both the mother and the sister. They were probably 7 feet from me. And when one of the victim impact statements mentioned that BK not only destroyed these victims' families, but he also destroyed his own family, Mary Ann, she just started sobbing. The mother, the sister was really broken up as well. Bill Thompson went on to say that the parents were understandably also protective of their son, sort of inferring that they didn't want to give up too much information if they had some on him. And as far as the sister goes, and I quote here, the sister didn't have anything specific to contribute, which is why they maybe weren't called during the plea hearing and why they wouldn't have been called during a trial. Bill Thompson also noted that the family was interviewed in January of 2024, so almost 2 years ago, and again during his arrest back in December of 2022. But Bill Thompson says, and again I quote, "Nothing they shared was substantively incriminating." After the plea deal, the family did release a statement. I think it was one of the only ones, or at least a rare statement, saying, and I quote again, "We will not release any comments or take questions. Please respect our wishes." So they are staying mum about everything. You're a bad person, an evildoer, as the great detective Phil Waters says. That's the case when a notorious serial killer wants you as his cellie. And that is the deal with Keith Jesperson. He is the so-called happy face killer. He suggested publicly this week on a podcast that BK should transfer to the Oregon State Penitentiary, where the happy face killer is serving life himself. The exact quote is as follows: "Best bet for Kohberger is to come to Oregon and spend his time here. This would be a great place for him to fall into." That's wonderful. You've got a notorious serial killer wanting you to move in and be cellies together for all eternity. He says the happy face killer is warning people that BK may be targeted in Idaho because of, number one, the staring. We all know all too well that blank deep stare, and also the high profile murders of these very attractive, smart, intelligent, young University of Idaho women, specifically Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, her best friend, and Xana Kernodle. He says this is now the happy face killer, saying that, listen, the other inmates at the IMSI, the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, are not going to be happy when they learn about this. Most of them obviously already know what's going on. And I asked Warden Randy Valley all about that. He said, look, not only did the inmates today get information off of their tablets in real time, but if they want any other information, all they do is call home and say, "Hey, Mom, can you Google this or look this up?" My kids say, "Search it up." So these inmates may say, "Hey, search up such and such." And literally in the snap of finger, they have information available to them. So they all know exactly who BK is and what he did. Something else we're learning as this information continues to flow in, there were other red flags regarding BK before the murders. At Washington State University, 2 professors reportedly discussed whether they should do an intervention with BK, and this came after he offended several female students. The Washington State University Police Chief Gary Jenkins, who I interviewed live last week when I was at the sentencing, and you can find that under the live tab. He gave us a comprehensive 30-minute interview. But to this outlet, he said, and I quote, BK followed a female student out to her car trying to flirt. In grad school, BK reportedly showed unusual interest also in mass killer Elliot Rodger, part of the quote unquote incel movement. And then classmate Brittany Slavin said, the rest of us were horrified by Rodger's murders. Bryan did not seem bothered. So, again, at one point, there was going to be a literal intervention by a couple of professors with BK because of his unusual behavior. If anyone could have picked up on it, it would have been them, these criminology students. Although Catherine Ramsland, who is a very well-known criminologist who wrote a book with BTK, another notorious serial killer, she came right out and said she didn't suspect BK of anything, nothing at all. She, after writing a book with BTK, and some people have compared, I don't know why, but have compared BK to BTK. But she said, hey, I had no idea. So there you go. Bottom line now, as I started, I will finish. BK is now in closed custody, officially in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day by himself with his own thoughts, which actually for him might be a happy place because it's deranged in there and maybe he enjoys being in that little box of a head of his. 23 hours a day alone. Food and water pass through a slot in the door. He does not go to a dining hall. It is passed through, and he eats on that crappy little metal bed. Fishing is common. We saw it happening while we were there. That's when inmates use strings from bed sheets to pass notes to each other. That is a way they communicate, and I'm sure people will be trying to get to BK. He's infamous in there now. They're going to want to talk to him. Some are going to want to target him. It's going to be touch and go for that guy within the walls of the IMSI for the, as I said, foreseeable future. Again, the happy-faced killer, Keith Jesperson, saying that Oregon would be, quote-unquote, softer, but says that BK's fate is, quote-unquote, sealed in Idaho, which is a chilling thought, that his fate is sealed in Idaho. What does that mean? Does that mean he's going to get prison justice? It's a good possibility. Does it mean he's going to live alone for the next 50 or 55 years, however long he lives? That's another very good possibility. Keep in mind, he's also a vegan. The warden did tell us that alternate meals for different religions are honored at the IMSI, but wouldn't tell us specifics about what kind of food that meant. At the Latah County Jail near Moscow, Idaho, we know, or inside Moscow, Idaho, he was being fed peanut butter and jelly. That was the vegan meal he was getting. He's also a neat freak. He was reportedly washing his hands constantly. And at one point during a football game, when the inmates were watching the game and were talking some smack, it triggered BK. He got up and said, hey, you talking about me? You talking about my mother? And they're like, no, we're just talking about football game. Relax yourself. And they said that was the only time they really saw like sort of an angry, mean streak in him. So BK, listen, he might have disappeared or tried to disappear into the night. And you just heard Bill Thompson say that outside of that DNA, that touch DNA off the knife sheet, they may not have had a case. And this guy could potentially still have walked free. That's how close it really was. But now, instead of disappearing into the night, BK is disappearing into the silence of the night every hour, every single day. No parole, no real appeal, although it is sort of in the cards. Despite the plea deal that says that there is no appeal, still within Idaho law, there is a chance that there will be an appeal made. Will it be looked at seriously by a judge? That is very unlikely. So I am comfortable saying that there will be no parole, no appeal, no escape for BK. That is the very latest on this case that we have been covering, as I said, from day one, back on November 13th, 2022. We forget that monster, and we will always remember Kaylee Goncalves, her best friend, Madison Mogen, and boyfriend and girlfriend, Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle. May their memories be a blessing forever. Love you, America. See you next time.